everybody, and welcome to another Sonic Talk. Sonic Talk episode 340. Gosh, that's a big number. Sounds like, well, we're heading for almost a year's worth of Sonic Talks. Another 6 months and we'll have got to 360 something. Interesting or not interesting, depending on how you feel about such things. Anyway, I want to say thank you very much for everybody to joining us in the chat room this week. Nice to see a good fulsome number. I hope everything is working technically for you. It seems to be here. I'm suffering. I think, remember a couple of weeks ago, my laptop went down and I sent it off and it came back and it was fine because they couldn't find a fault, and then it died yesterday more spectacularly, so it's gone again. So I'm sort of ricketing about on my old laptop, which seems to be all right, but is a bit sluggish. But there are various issues that crop up from time to time, so I do apologise in advance if any of them affect today's broadcast. Anyway, let's go to our guests. We'll start with Mr. Dave Spears, who's looking like Achtung, dive, das Boot kind of extra there. Very, you just need a bit more of a beard. And I could find the theme music. GeForce Software, of course, .com makes the fine software instruments. And hoarders, I say that, I don't use that word lightly, of analog synthesizers. So, Dave, it's been a couple of weeks since you've been on the show. That's long enough for you to probably replenish your entire wish list of synthesizers. So, have you done anything bad? Have you anything you want to confess?
Yeah.
Well, you don't have to.
My name is Dave Spears and I am a synthaholic. We bought a TR-808, which is nice.
Oh, lovely.
And then we bought on Friday last week. Yeah, I think it was Friday. We bought a CS80 in need of a lot of love and attention. Ooh. So it's gone to the synth hospital. We took it and I bade it farewell. I was like, oh, see you soon. And I'm really hoping that I'll get that back by Christmas. But I did promise Kent, the ace Mr. CS80 fixer, that I wouldn't hassle him.
Kent Spong,
so
he's obviously in the he's often in the chat room. We did especially, in fact, the creator by chance or the winner of the theme tune. Names picked out of a hat kind of thing. It turns out that he was the man who did the theme tune. We're going to hold another competition, I think, sometime in the not too distant future for a replacement for that, much as it's done a good service. But I'm glad to hear that, Dave. That sounds very exciting. What have I got? I've got a what's it? I've got a Pulse 2, which finally arrived, and that is, I have to say, a really good sounding synthesizer. So there will be a review coming up. In the meantime, we've got some other things going on. I don't know if you saw, if you're missing Gaz, because he wasn't here last week and isn't here this week. He will be in Sonic Touch. We've got another episode in the can that's going to be coming. And I've also reviewed the Gecko MIDI controller for Leap Motion. But anyway, back to Mark Tinley, likebeing.com. Or, well, you did tell me to put something else on there, but I couldn't remember what it was. Or I tried to go to that.
marktinley.co.uk.
I think I tried the www and it didn't work.
A bit.
Yeah.
Did you? Oh.
I think you need
it should work. Likebeing.com just takes you to a holding page that goes to all the different websites that I'm building at the moment. So it's still relevant.
Your super hub.
Still me.
Yeah. Anyway, Mark, nice to have you there. You're looking very jaunty today.
I've changed my hat.
Yeah, it's looking good. It's got there's a sort of slight Steve Strange about you now. It was Captain Sensible a while ago. Now it's more Steve Strange.
Apart from the eyebrows. Steve
Strange, yeah.
Strange, avant caterpillar, le caterpillar, perhaps.
Has Steve Strange got monobrow, has he?
No, he used to shave them off, didn't he? So he had very strange, sort of drawn on. So I don't know if he still does that.
I'm not sure.
Probably look a bit strange with greying hair, wouldn't it? Not having eyebrows.
I don't. Well, we did do a little piece because there was a Visage reissue, wasn't there? And he was all dolled up.
Yeah. Yeah, he did look interesting. I mean, he managed to look 50 and not look like he was trying to be
20.
He kind of like did a whole fashion thing that suited somebody of his age. But he's seems to be quite a clever man when it comes to that kind of thing. So.
Well, anyway, you're looking good, Mark. Your lighting is very Rembrandt. It's looking. It does your web camera.
That's better than Steve Strange or Captain Sensible.
There we go. There's oh my goodness. There you go. Except your white balance is now you've gone more yellow, but that's okay too.
Have I?
Yes.
What did I do?
You moved your other hand. There you go. You move your hand there. It goes blue. Put your hand down. We'll go yellow in a minute.
Analog controls.
Yeah, amazing. It's like gesture control. As I said, we did this thing. I did this thing with the Leap Motion and Gecko, and that's got gesture control and up and down and in and around, and also being able to do that as well. But yeah, so it's quite interesting. But you'll have to wait.
How is that thing then? You've set it up and tried it, have you?
I have. Yeah, I reviewed the Gecko by Geert Bevin. Sorry, I get his name wrong. It's 2 E's in the Geert and 1 E in the Bevin, and he's the guy who does a lot of the Eigen Labs, Eigen Harp stuff. And it's interesting, but it's also very alien. So it's the sort of thing that I probably need to be shown something cool to do with it, rather than try and do what I think I should do with it. If you see what I mean, it requires a whole new level of learning, really, to kind of figure out. And also bear in mind, if you're playing something, you've only got maybe one hand free and you have to do something with that. So yeah, I think it's got a little bit of way to go, and perhaps it'll be a very interesting, but it sort of feels a bit unnecessary at the moment.
Talking about harps, I went to in the market house in Glastonbury. There was one of those sort of mind, body, spirit fair kind of things, and it was in aid of homeless people, and I thought, well, I'll go along and check it out. And there was a chap in the doorway playing a harp, and I sort of thought, oh, that's quite nice, you know, all the kind of... And I just sort of stood and stopped and listened to him for a while, and then kind of got chatting with him, and he said, well, of course you could do this with a harp, and he started playing Cyndi Lauper's Time After Time, and I was like, whoa, okay, that's weird. And then he went through an entire rendition of all these different pop songs in major key. Then this other chap came out, who's a busker around Glastonbury, a guy called Dave Beach, and Dave said, oh, can you do blues on that thing? And he retuned the harp, and he started doing like these really like kind of honky-tonky, bluesy, kind of jazzy kind of riffs on it. And it completely mind-bended my whole idea of what harps are supposed to be able to do. And I was just kind of like, whoa, okay. Well, I mean, kind of course, because it's a musical instrument and the guy's a musician and understands different musical styles. But at the same time, how narrow-minded of me to think that you only play...
Was it a harp with levers, or was it levers?
Yeah, it had levers.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah,
those things are amazing.
It.
You don't see, if you ever seen one of those levered harps and you go up close, because normally you only see the soundbox bit and the lady in the gown, you know, but actually round the back there are tons of levers for kind of tuning and muting and chromatically changing the strings. It's amazing, actually. That's really mechanically quite complex.
I mean, what caught my eye first was it had red and blue strings on it.
Yeah.
And having been thinking about extending the scale length of my guitar and putting thicker strings on it and tuning it down, then I kind of got fascinated by the thickness of the strings. I know,
yeah.
So Asperger's, isn't it?
Did you take a gauge to
the
them?
detail, you know. But anyway, this triggered off this conversation, which like led to a kind of a musical revelation for me, because it was kind of like, oh, okay, you know, here's me thinking I'm like, oh, really forward thinking, and I have all these ideas which are so out the box and everything, and this harp player's blew my bloody mind. Unbelievable.
Wow, well, great. I mean, it's always nice to have one of those sort of musical, interesting revelations. Like I say, I've got the Pulse 2 here, which I won't say as a revelation, but it's my first exposure to sort of core Waldorf synthesis outside of the Sledge, which was fun, but not all that densely packed in terms of sound, whereas this feels much more kind of robust as a sound source. Anyway, let's get on to our first topic. This is Gareth Jones. I'll play a little bit of him. This is for the Microsoft. This is Microsoft developer stuff. There's a bit of intro, and I'll fast forward him because he says something really interesting, which was sort of pertinent at about 1 minute 20. But we'll give you the setup.
My favourite noise is the noise of the world. Sound of nature. And if I have to shrink it down to one of the 4 elements, I'd probably say water.
That made me laugh. This bit makes me laugh even more.
Partly because it's so challenging to record it. It's so challenging to effectively bring the sound of water out of a sound.
Right, I'm just going to move forward. Yeah, we've got those stories of trying to record beautiful water features, and they just end up sounding like toilets flushing. But here's the interesting part for me, anyway.
Form them, of course, they're full of harmonic richness. Bringing complexity, timbrally, and dynamic range to a small device is super challenging, obviously. And I guess
Hello? What happened there then? Oh, he stopped playing. Come on, Gareth, don't be shy.
It's been eaten
This
by
what's happened.
aliens.
Basically, he was going on to say that it's. I don't know what's happened. That's really annoying. If I can get to that again, that's very, very frustrating. What? Yeah, it won't play. There must be something faulted. There's a fault in the machine. But what he was basically saying was that we know from history, obviously, that our grandparents, and great grandparents in some cases, listened to sort of awful gramophone records with sort of ear trumpets, and got the essence of a performance and the vibe and the memory of something more emotionally and dynamically realistic than they're actually listening to. So there's no reason why that shouldn't be happening in the mobile devices. And I thought that's really interesting. I hadn't really ever thought about it like that. And I thought, So he doesn't go on to say how you actually achieve this, which would be very interesting.
That was...
But were you waiting for that, Mark, as well?
That was I sat there and I listened to the whole thing. I thought, wow, this is really interesting. This is really interesting. Then he just kind of petered out at the end. And I thought, What?
Tell us.
What are you actually telling us? I know there's a problem recording things and reproducing things, but I thought you were going to solve it. I was sort of disappointed at the end. But
I guess
I wanted some, even if you had a demonstration of, hey, check this sound out. This is going to sound great on your laptop speakers because I did this or whatever.
Well, I to be honest, I think this was a piece that was obviously commissioned by Microsoft, and it was just interesting people. And Gareth is a very interesting fellow. We interviewed him. We interviewed him for the at the Roundhouse Mute Festival thing, and he was just brilliant value. And I am negotiating with him to do a day in the life blog as well with him, which he says he's up for. He's just got to find the right time. So I'm really hoping maybe it'll be the day that he has to perform a challenging mix with dynamic content for a mobile device. I don't know. That would be good if it was. But I mean, do you mix? Do you even consider that? I mean, because we now mix. I mix on like small speakers. I've never really thought about mixing on tiny little devices and that sort of side of things. Headphones, maybe.
I've got I suppose it's a driver on my iPhone. It's called. Oh God, what is it called? I'd have to have a look. It's by the same people that make the Air. Like you've got AirPort and AirPlay on the Mac.
Yeah.
It's
Rogue Amoeba.
They have a PC app, but they also have an app for the iPhone, which means that you can turn the iPhone into a speaker, and then you can pick. So you can route the output from Logic, I think, straight into the iPhone speaker and listen to see what it's going to sound like, and then tweak a little bit.
Is it airfoil?
So I do that sometimes.
Is
airfoil, yeah.
Airfoil. That is a real. I didn't realise you could do it with airfoil.
It does it back to front. So that's rather than mix it down and then copy it into iTunes and then sync it across to the device and then play it and listen to see what's happening, you can pretty much have it in Logic and tweak it and play with it and then play it through the speakers and find out what's happening at the other end.
That is super cool.
I mean, there's still a little bit of latency, but it's very useful to be able to tweak a mix and to use your iPhone as a speaker, as an Air speaker.
That is,
because all sorts of weird things happen when you go into mono as well, because you're coming out one tiny little kind of... I mean, it's not really a speaker, is it? There's a driver at the end of this kind of rubber, kind of horn-shaped thing on an iPhone.
Really? I've not seen what it is inside.
No, it's interesting to pull it apart because it's not like a traditional speaker, really. It's sort of more, I don't know, it's like a miniaturized, those horn things.
That's a really interesting idea about being able to do that with the speaker. I've just realised I haven't got the screen grab set up, so I don't know if Dave would like to come in there while I set that up. If I could just drop you in the driving seat for a moment, Dave.
Yeah, except I've probably got very little to say on this subject. Like everybody else, I was kind of waiting. Okay, come on then. In fact, I thought he was talking about dynamic range for a while and how the loudness wars had kind of killed all of that, which then led me on to another thing which Apple have done, haven't they, with this iTunes radio. There's some kind of new algorithm that somehow reduces dynamic range, or if you've squashed it to death, then it will kind of unsquash it. I don't know. I did have a load of blah on it, which was kind of semi-interesting, which of course I've obviously completely lost now. It was saying, oh yeah, sound check algorithm, which doesn't allow to overcompress audio signals to simulate greater loudness. It simply turns it down to its actual volume. So in effect, the new standard is not oriented towards maximum peak level, or its playback volume towards a complex mix of program loudness range, maximum true peak level. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I thought that's what he was getting. I thought that's where he was going, actually. I thought it was kind of like Microsoft had developed some newfangled super duper thing like this. And I'm quite intrigued to see how this works. And I know it's all been passed by the EBU, hasn't it?
I missed most of that, but that sounds interesting. Like it probably was interesting. I'm still trying to get the website, the web preview to go.
Haven't they've changed the broadcast wave format as well, haven't they? The actual definition of broadcast wave format includes a what was I going to say? It's kind of a cap on the loudness of the track. So not the volume level, the loudness. So the overall perceived loudness is not supposed to be over a certain amount. And if you go over that, especially for broadcast on TV and radio, then they're sort of saying, that's not a true broadcast wave file. Please take it away and fix it.
Well, yes, there's a whole load of metering apps that have been coming out recently with all these new standards, because they're not completely standardized as we've been hoping that they would be, but they haven't been completely standardized yet at all.
I mean, in terms of 0 dB, that doesn't really mean anything unless you're a sine wave and you're playing a 1 kilohertz tone, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of music, they're developing a new, I guess it's a new loudness standard, or they're implementing a loudness standard that says this is what we expect for you to. It's for radio shows, isn't it?
John Wise says in the chat room, meant to cut advert loudness on TV.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's a great idea. That drives me insane.
Yes.
I'm
and
kind
your
of constantly,
neighbours.
particularly when you're in bed and you've got the TV on, and like the wife's asleep here and don't want to really disturb her, but there's this program and you're watching it, and I'm constantly kind of messing with the remote levels.
When those special interest ad comes on after midnight, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. that channel.
Oops.
Oh, did I wake you, dear?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Who's that? What's that man doing in a vest? Yeah. But it was an interesting idea. I don't know. Do you ever think about stuff that you're doing for mixing in terms of mobile phone stuff? Because that airfoil thing sounds really useful for playing stuff out. I mean, I'm guessing it must use some sort of compression that's similar to what you would get on a MP3 anyway. Do you think about that sort of stuff, Dave, or you just kind of mix for your own pleasure?
No, mix for pleasure, mix just to make everything sound lovely to my ears.
Yeah.
And then other people come in and go, it's quite fascinating watching, other people like, obviously people like Rick Smith. I know at one point he would use that little Fostech, that was a mono little powered speaker, and Chris has always advocated, if it sounds good. In fact, when we were up at Benji's Benji was like, if it sounds great in mono, it's going to sound great on stereo, if you can get everything balanced for that. But no, I kind of prefer to sort of hand that job to somebody else and come back and go, can I have a client fader, please? No, usually that sounds brilliant. I don't know, my ears get very, I think it's as the older I get, my ears get more fatigued. So if I'm writing for any real length of time, or if I'm working for somebody else in the studio for any length of time, then I kind of really value those moments where I can kind of step away from it and then come back, hopefully slightly more objectively. But then, if you've got a great mix engineer.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that because, I mean, I think I mentioned a couple of weeks back that the mix part of it was... I used to enjoy that, but now I actually can't be bothered with it. It sort of feels like that's the stuff that takes ages, and I've lost the interest. I like the creative part of mix, like coming up with a sound for the mix, but I don't know if I can be bothered to the detail of the mix. I'd much rather have someone just make it so. I don't know how you feel about that sort of thing.
I find it really interesting in that when I write, it's a bit of a kind of building up. it's like an immersive experience. That's kind of what I like to build up, and I know that's frustrated some people that I work with. So the way a synth will work with another synth and the way those harmonics will interact with that, for me, is really, really important. But then actually, what's fascinating is that with a great mix engineer, if I walk away and then come back, there is always more clarity in what I'm presented with, which
Yeah.
I like being pleasantly
I
surprised
know what you
by
mean,
that.
though. Sometimes I remember, because there's this sort of magic glue of low fidelity that sort of, when that's removed or cleaned away or not retranslated into a high fidelity mix, it just leaves these massive gaping holes in the audio spectrum and the sonic mix that make you feel like, oh, it's all wrong. You know, it doesn't seem
It
to
was
have that
my
anymore.
worst ever experience was when we used to record in a little kind of crummy 24 track in Rotherhithe when it was a real dump of a place. But this studio was so vibey, it had loads going on. It was right adjacent to a squat. God knows how it never got robbed every 5 minutes, but it was really cool. And everything we left with that we recorded in that place just had a feel about it, which was probably, partly because I was there, and every time I listened to it outside of that experience, it kind of conjured up that experience. And then we got a producer guy, what was his name? I've forgotten his name now. It's quite a big guy. Oh, he owned Bronze Records, remember them? In fact, I think his name was Jerry Bron, and he owned the Roundhouse Studios up at Chalk Farm with a big SSL and all the rest of it. And of course, he came to see us and he said, "Oh, I love the band and whatnot. What I'd like to do is take it on to the next level." And I'll never forget going in there, like really excited, and then having this feeling at mix time of it's just cold and sterile and horrible. And I think I've probably psychologically done everything to avoid that subsequently.
That's an interesting point. I think there used to be, much more so in the sort of 80s and 90s, this concept that there was some magic special sauce, whereas now we've sort of gone in the box. That seems to have been removed and only seems to be applied to the actual recording space rather than the mix space these days. Do you think that's fair enough, or is that just rubbish, Mark?
No, I don't.
Me?
Yes, I don't know. You look like you wanted to come in there.
I'm very against magic special sauce.
Gets you into all
I've
sorts of
spent
trouble.
my whole career going to people, why are you spending all that money on a studio? Look, I've got a computer here. It's a laptop, yes, I know, and I've got a sound card, and let's just go in a hotel room and do it. And they go like, can't do that, can you? And I go, yeah, look, let's hire a suite, let's go in there, and then we set it up, and then they do it, and then they go, wow, this is really good. We don't have to go to the studio every day. And so... and the magic special. I think the magic special sauce, and what I've noticed is people like Jeremy Wheatley, who picks the mix apart for days and adds little tiny elements that you can't even hear, but you sort of perceive them, and you go, "What the hell's he done to this? It sounds really different." And then you listen. You sit in front of two speakers, and it's like, "This is huge. What's he done?" Like all my mixes are always really, fairly narrow and sort of. I don't know. They just.
I know what you're saying.
He brings it to life. That particular person, and Spike Stan, brilliant.
Yes, I would agree.
It's just like whatever magic special sauce he has, he's the guy with the magic special sauce bottle. And I don't think it has too much to do with the recording process, especially for synths. Maybe if you've got a drum kit and you're in Abbey Road Studio 1 and you want to capture that ambience and you want to move all those big tiles around and kind of get that whole kind of vibe, then maybe there's something there. But
No, that's interesting.
That
is interesting. I always struggle with that because it's easy these days with a synth patch or effects patches to make everything really wide. But there obviously it must be a formula or some guidelines to what do you make wide to make everything sound wide, but you still get the solidity of the stuff down the middle. That's what I want to know.
Yeah, for
me
it's
too.
all to do with resonances.
Sorry?
For me, it's all to do with resonances. If it has a particular harmonic resonance, then that's kind of what you have to play to.
Right.
If there isn't, then it becomes broader. So actually, if it's very focused on a particular bandwidth, if you can narrow it down, and it doesn't, particularly with pads and stuff like that, and anything synth-wise, you can narrow that spectrum down as long as it keeps that character.
Right, you just take the stuff
you can lose the bottom end and you can lose the top end, and that way you can make everything sit just playing to strengths. But great mix engineers are just like manna from heaven.
Yeah,
I spoke to Dave Gamson a million years ago. There's a Michel Undicello album which I absolutely adore that he produced in '91 that still sounds utterly amazing. And I was saying to him, what was the recording? I was asking him what was the recording process on that. And he said, oh man, we just used I got a feeling it was like some M-Audio interface. He said, but the difference came with this guy, I think it might have been Bob Power or somebody. He said, it was just such an amazing mix engineer. It's got so much energy in it.
That's interesting. There's some great stuff in the chat room, actually. Echosonic, sometimes the bigger the mix, it becomes an exercise in organising grains of rice so that they are all parallel. I like that as a metaphor.
So true.
That's a good one. Yes, lots of interesting stuff. But it seems to be there is kind of general consensus that mixing is difficult. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I've had the fortune to work with Spike Stent on a couple of occasions, and yeah, it's what he can do is pretty amazing. It's like he's sort of, if your mix you're relatively pleased with and you like the structure of it and you think he just pumps these steroids into it that makes it go just like bang, big, huge, particularly for stuff that's got, I mean, he did, it's hard to forget, hard to remember sometimes that he did a lot of the classic, I think he did all the Massive Attack stuff that really kind of, I think the stuff with Liz Fraser, that's him. And, that's just, it's pretty amazing, really.
When I see it, I mean, we talk about mixes getting muddy, but then one way of thinking about that, and an analogy might be that if you've got a whole load of colours and you mix them together, it's so easy to end up at brown, isn't it?
Yeah.
And these guys, they literally come along and they just kind of spark and put some colour back into it and bring it all to life. And then you come out of there going, how did they do that? And it's, I guess it's years of honing that particular skill just in... And sitting in that niche and going, that's my skill, is like mixing and bringing things to life. And
it's frustrating though, isn't it? Because I mean, we've all been doing this for a long time, and I'm terrible at mixing, and I really thought for a while I was good, but I realised that I'm just not at all in any way. I mean, I might have mixed a few things just so for what they needed to be, but it's not like a skill that I could say I had, which is a bit disappointing.
Same with mastering engineering, isn't it?
Yes.
My thing is sometimes I'm brilliant and other times I'm not, but the problem is I don't know what made the brilliant ones really good. So somebody might ask me to mix something and I might come out with a really, that I'll go back and look at, because I can never tell at the time, so I might go back 4 or 5 years later and think, bloody hell, that's actually really good. But then I think, well, what did I do there that made that one good and the one I did like a couple of weeks later wasn't so good? I've done roughs for Duran Duran that are way better than some of the mixes they got from other people, but I don't know what I did.
I don't know, maybe it's, who knows. Anyway, but that's fun. Now we've got a new synth. It's not often we say, actually it's getting more and more often we're saying that, which is great. And this one's all arty, as they do. This is very switched on Moog. I expect to see the Droogs come in and beat him to death with a giant ceramic phallus. Well, I hope not. Obviously, you don't want that to happen to him, even though he's wearing a hoodie. This, of course, is the Elektron analog keys, everybody. Woohoo! Yeah, big fanfare. In fact, fanfare is fairly appropriate for what he's playing. And this is the news that, it's out, finally. Came out on Saturday. It's got that great Elektron reverb, actually, which I have noticed in the Analog 4 as well. It looks like it's a 4-voice Analog 4, but with a keyboard and a joystick and a bit more software update, so it'll do all 4 voices together. But what's interesting about this also is, now this... Boss, yeah, I want some ballet dancers in this, alright? Can I have some... Do you know anyone? Yeah, alright then, you can have them. I know that, I bet that's John at Elektron, he does all the video stuff. There they are, there's the girls. And now he's doing the, it's the good test of any analog, isn't it? Make it sound like a wet fart. There we go, and I think that worked as well. So excuse my terribly unfunny commentary there. But yeah, Analog 4, seems to have created a lot of buzz about it. We were hopefully going to have someone there at the Berlin launch, but due to my administrative error, my reporter on the ground went to the club at 10 o'clock and missed the press launch completely because I forgot to tell him about it because I thought he knew. But anyway, that's irrelevant. But excited? You haven't got any Elektron stuff, and they are now making analog, Dave. So you might have to make room for one more thing, and it's not very big.
No. No. Oh, God, this is like purgatory, isn't it, for me? I really like the sound of this. I went through the demos and stuff and thought, ooh, filters sound great, actually.
It's expensive, isn't it? It's not a cheap. It's towards the $2,000, $1849. It's their usual sort of European boutique synth price. So it's not cheap.
But it does sound nice. So what are we talking? We're talking 2 VCOs and 2 subs as well.
2 sub oscillators, dual analog filters, analog overdrive per voice, drive storage hosting. This is something that they do. It's just a bit of flash RAM, I think. External CV gate sequencer, parameter assignable, extensive modular, super void reverb, which does sound very nice. They're wide chip. They've got some nice effects algorithms in there, I must say. Polyphonic, multi-timbral, and dual voice modes, unison modes, dedicated MIDI controller mode. Have I got? There we go. I can probably throw a screen. What's it up? On sale December the 5th, shipping December the 9th. The one thing that was interesting, and you got maybe heard a little bit of it. What they've done is the patch changes are super fast, and they've created this sequencer mode that allows you to change programs for each step. So obviously, if you've got one voice or maybe 2, so you can have things changing. So you can create these really complex rhythmical or musical parts where it changes rapidly. And that's quite an interesting.
How they were doing that?
Yeah, because I think that's how they were doing some of that stuff, and that's quite interesting. Because there was something else recently that patch changed really, really quick. Bass Station does the same thing. You can just do 16th parts and do kick snare hat kick snare hat, and create actual rhythm tracks from a single voice because the program change response is so fast. Yes, it's as Guga says in the chat room, it's P-locks, which is their thing, parameter locks. Will I be reviewing one soon? The answer to that is no, because they want to send it to me early January, which realistically is going to be not till the 6th or 7th of January, which means I'd have to review it and learn it and get it all done and prepare for NAMM at the same time. So I'm going to see if we can talk them to come down. But I have heard there's going to be something else coming out as well. Apparently there was something at the press launch under glass, but I don't know any more about that. I know, Mark, I think you'd get on with Elektron stuff. I think it's the sort of thing that you would kind of appreciate. You might get into, actually. It's very absorbing. It's like a process that you it's a way of working that you just stick to that machine. And I don't know whether that might suit you or not, but I suspect it might.
Depends how big it is. I've got nowhere to put anything.
Well.
I liked the sounds it was making. It made, there's certain things that analog synths can do, and they have strengths in those areas that when they're not trying to sound like oboes or strings or any of those things. That's like when they moved the joystick and did that kind of screech with a kiss kind of sound at the end of it. I really liked that sound, and the kind of sound of everything disappearing into a big... that got me. And the rhythmic thing, when they were switching between kick and then...
Yeah.
I was thinking, how's that thing doing that? That's really interesting. But it's like, all the parameters changing really quick, I guess, somehow.
Yeah, well, you can parameter lot, I think 5 deep per step, as well as changing programs too. So you can do all of that stuff.
I mean, what makes that really different is it becomes like a wave sequence, which is distinctly different to taking a whole load of analog drums, because if I do that with a TR-808, I will always end up putting 2 drums on top of each other, and if you do it with a synth, then you only ever have that moving wave sequence, and then it sounds like it's really changing direction and doing something very angular, and it sounds much more exciting actually. And then I don't know why I always put too many layers in things, but I do.
Well, it's a way of working. Lots of people do that. I mean,
I mean, when I used to have this thing called I had a sampler that I built, an AI sampler, and it's plugged into the back of a ZX Spectrum. And the only way I could put 2 things together would be to add a snare and a hi-hat together if I wanted a
As a
snare and a
sample, right,
hi-hat in
yeah.
the same beat, and have another sample which had that, because it was monophonic. So it meant that things were very separated and very broken up, and it had a really kind of, well, again, I said angular kind of quality to it, and I liked this synth. It was doing that as well, so it did sound good.
Well, whether I mean, I think, like I said, just shipping December 9th, so people are going to start getting them before Christmas. Obviously not the reviewers though, but like I say, I don't think I'll be able to fit one in, but hopefully I'm going to try and talk Elektron to coming over and doing what they did before, which was kind of do a presentation, because I think that went down quite well and it was successful for them, although I noticed in one of their presentation videos they just stole all the shots and did it at home save themselves the flair, but there was no independent aspect to that. So anyway, we'll see. But people are getting, because we've also just done this King 2013 analogs, basically polysynths, because we did the monosynths poll, that's still running, and that's incredibly close actually from the sort of top 4 synths. And the polysynths one, I had to put it in because it's released in 2013, and there will be some people who are getting it by then. So yeah, go and vote. I mean, I don't think it's worth voting for that necessarily, because it's a bit unfair, because obviously it's got no track record or anything. But I've been getting so much stick for not including Access Virus on that. You know why? And it's like, they haven't released a synth for 3 years. How can I possibly put that? Anyway, so one man got very uppity. I might review it when I get back from NAMM, but again, it's like there's 4 weeks between NAMM and Music Messer. I mean, it's just crazy. So I will try, but to review something like that, which is so deep and so all-inclusive, I remember working out, I have reviewed some Elektron stuff in the past. It did take a very long time to learn and know, because you need to know these things reasonably well if you're going to pass any sort of judgment on them. And I can't really invest the time. That's the problem, because it is very much, it's sort of the Elektron way, and that's it. If you integrate it with other equipment and it's not the hub, particularly with the sequencer, because the sequencer is such an integral part of the Elektron stuff. If you don't use the sequencer, you're sort of wasting a lot of that stuff. So, I mean, maybe they should consider releasing some sort of a non-sequenced version at a cut-down price or something, if that's feasible. I don't know if it is.
So when is the review? I'll review it for you in January, if it's in January, because we probably would have moved to a bigger house by then.
Well, I'll have to think about it.
If they don't come and demonstrate it, and you need somebody to review it, it sounds like something that I'd probably get into. So,
well,
consider me.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. I'll definitely check that out. And Dave, I'm sure you'll be pleased to know you're probably not going to NAMM this year, are you?
Probably not. No.
Not even to get your hands on a bit of hands-on.
I'll probably be kept away from there now, won't I? Given our recent expenditure, because we're like, no,
yeah,
you're not going.
The Schmidt will be
Stay
there, won't
away
it?
from the synthesizers.
The Schmidt polysynth will be there, yeah.
Yeah. No, I didn't want to look at anything else, and actually the sound of this kind of intrigued me. The only thing that I was thinking about was the data knobs, and also the 4-voice aspects. For me, 6 would have been nice, but what I love about the 8-voice, and so even if we only use half of it and use the 4-voice, I love that, putting it into unison and then obviously setting each of the oscillators to a different pitch and stuff like that. And that's kind of what excited me about this. I was going, okay, so you've got 2 subs per voice, you've got 2 VCOs per voice. Actually, you could probably have a little bit of fun with this. Anyway,
I wonder if you can tune. I wonder where the subs would probably get their pitch from each of the oscillators, because quite often it only takes the pitch from one of the oscillators, isn't it, when you've got a sub? So you can't interval the subs.
Yeah. No, that's what I'd like to know, really.
That sort of stuff.
Like that. What the tuning is. I'm sure it'll be great. I know guys who've got the machine drum who absolutely adore it and swear by it. So yeah, it's kind of sort of semi-exciting, but I will resist.
Okay. All right then. Well, anyway, there we go. The Elektron analog keys is available to order from December the 5th, so not long. So if you're going to go that way, then go for it. And it looked kind of funky. But I will say, that Cenk, the guy who does all of their demos, I mean, he is probably the only person who can do what he does in the world on their stuff, and so he makes it all look so easy and intuitive, but he spends a lot of time just head down fiddling, button fiddle. It's very you have to move around the OS, no matter how much. It's not all knob per function stuff. So you've got to kind of, you've got to get inside it a little bit. It's not as intuitive as initially as you would hope, I think. But anyway. Oh yeah, come on then. Let's have this then.
What is a Skoog? Inside us all is a musician waiting to get out. Trouble is, instruments can be tricky, especially if you have a disability. Meet the Skoog, the easy-to-play instrument for everyone. Tap it, shake it, squeeze it, stroke it, give it a little twist. Just plug it into a Mac and play. Whatever your musical skills or physical ability, the Skoog software allows you to customize the instrument's sensitivity to suit your playing style, which means anyone can rock out to their favorite tunes or use programs like GarageBand to open up a new world of amazing music and sounds.
Yes, both free products that you have to pay. That's the Skoog. I won't go into that now, but this is an interesting. That I when I first saw this, it looks really compelling and kind of fun. It's a very Fisher-Price kind of toy sort of vibe bit, and very tactile, and looks like a lot of fun. They just got basically listed in the Apple Store. And I didn't. Somebody posted in the comments. I thought it looked interesting until I saw the price, and I thought, well, how expensive can it be? It's actually £500, which I think is pretty expensive for something like that.
Okay.
I'm guessing there's probably quite a lot of stuff that went into it, but I mean, the dog gets hold of that, and that's kind of gone forever, isn't it? It's like it does because it does have a chew toy look to it a little bit, but. It looks. I mean, obviously, it seems like one of the big things is perhaps people of disability being able to do stuff, and that's all fine. I think the thing that I objected to a little bit with this personally was this, like, you don't have to be a musician to make great music kind of thing. And I was just thinking, well, what other parallels are there where that could work? You don't have to be a surgeon to perform an operation. You don't have to be a house builder to build a house, unless, of course, you want it to be demolished because building standards won't have it anywhere near there. You know what I mean? It just sort of feels like, why is that all right? It seems the only possibility.
Well, it's like desktop publishing, isn't it? That's what happened. That was the first thing to get hit, wasn't it?
Comic Sans.
You don't have to be a designer to create your own really cool cards. Except everybody who churned out their own business cards looked like shit. Thank goodness we didn't. We don't do that anymore. But I think industries go through this stage, don't they? Kind of revolutionary, and now you don't have to be good at that in order to achieve being good at that, and it's like really strange. And video, desktop publishing, music seems to be the kind of three things that everybody goes, anybody could do that. As long as you've got one of these, anyone can do that. Weird.
Yeah, aspirational. Weird. It does look fun.
And we all buy into it for a while. We all kind of go, oh yeah, that'd be great. I've always wanted to do that. And then we kind of go, actually, no, I will go and get a mix engineer.
That's a good example there. Yeah, CR78 chat room. Yeah, dumbing down of everything. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I think this probably looks like a great fun product. I mean, it does seem disproportionately expensive for what it actually is and what it's made of. But maybe there's something super special about it, and or whatever. I don't know. I mean, and they certainly made a good compelling case for owning one until you see the price, which they don't mention. Which I can't see in any way why it would be so expensive. But it's just a very interesting world. I don't know, Mark. What do you think? Landfill technology? Well, you wouldn't dare, would you, with that price?
Doesn't make sense to me, really. I didn't really understand it. It's got coloured balls on it, right? With 5 faces with coloured balls on it.
Yeah.
Four faces around the side and 1 on top. So what does that relate to?
The pentatonic scale.
And do things. Yeah. So anyone can make music as long as you're writing music in pentatonic scale. Is that what it's saying? Or will it intuitively know that actually the next note that you wanted to play in the scale happened to go into like melodic minor or something?
Well, I suspect there's there's all sorts of stuff you can do intelligently. You touch it and it triggers a or the or sound in in the right place in the right sequence.
It seems like somebody in their marketing department's gone, oh, this would be good for disabled people, and they've emphasised that a bit, but without really emphasising it. It's almost like I don't know, what's it called? Like not piecemeal. What is it? I can't think of the term. It's like when you say something to sort of like to capture somebody's listening, but you're not really interested in them at all. What's that called?
I'm not sure.
But anyway, I don't know. I mean, I'd have to, if you gave me one and I had it in my hands and it was tactile and it did some interesting things, then maybe. But I don't know.
Yeah, it seems. Interestingly, I don't know if this is true or not. Lynn Levitt in the chat room says they have cerebral palsy, and I'm guessing this is perhaps, one of the targets they're looking for. Maybe it's maybe it's the idea that, one of the big sells they sell on it is the therapeutic aspect. And maybe, in the right environment given the right sort of tutorship or whatever, it might have something really good to offer. But I mean, I'm not sure that it needs to be that. I mean, necessarily. It seems like a very expensive way of kind of giving anybody with a disability the joy of music. Because I mean, sure, you can make music with all sorts of things you can hit or whatever. I don't know, maybe they'd care to comment whether or not you think it's sort of
cerebral palsy. Can't you cover yourself in electrodes and go and jump in a swimming pool, plug yourself into MIDI?
Well, you probably could, yeah. I mean, there's all sorts of things. I think the thing is that it's probably making us a bit sort of inhale deeply is the price. It's hard to understand how it can be.
I was fascinated with it until we got to that point. Actually, it was only when I read down it, I saw the video and thought, "Oh, that's quite cool." The clue is in. We've got it in the Apple Store. That's when you start thinking, there'll be a premium on this.
Yes,
and then at the bottom, I went, "Whoa."
So presumably Apple are making at least 30% on that, right? Because that's the way it works there. I don't know how it works on hard. Well, I don't know. I know how it works on hardware, or what.
The thing is, if they get it approved for disabled use, then everyone who runs a disabled kind of music therapy suite is going to kind of almost be forced to buy one, aren't they?
I'm sure they could spend 500 quid on much more.
I like I mean, I've got a friend who works with disabled people, and I like those light beam MIDI things that the person can literally move around in front of them. There's a lot of freedom in that, and they sort of they make movement, and then they get some kind of feedback from synths or whatever, and that can be musical. And you just set the hardware up to follow movement and create musical tones. But it depends how tactile the person is, I suppose. How much their ability to physically feel something can relate to converting that into music.
Yeah, I guess.
I think it's more about, I mean, with people who are severely disabled, it's more about movement and being able to translate their movement into something, because not always aware of
maybe the leap motion might work better in that instance.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's not 500 quid.
No.
And the other thing I noticed is this thing plugs into a Mac.
Yeah, so it's 500 quid and a Mac.
Now, if you're running a music therapy suite, are you going to be in the Mac world or the PC world? Because a lot of the stuff for disabled people runs in the PC world. So it seems a bit odd that it runs on a Mac. That was going to be my first criticism, I suppose. I mean, I don't know. I need to physically hold one and try it to get a real sense of what it does. I don't.
To me, there is an aspect of this. There's an aspect of this sort of feeling a little bit like I've got a mate who works in Apple. Sort of. I mean, I may be totally off the mark here, but it just seems an unrealistic place. Got a great video. Obviously, got investment. They've got good public relations going there because they've got it in. It just seems like a bit of a red herring, really, for that price. To be honest,
it has to do something that other things don't do, and they have to have a unique selling point, I suppose, and they're not telling us what that is. So either it doesn't have one, or they need to find somebody better to market it.
The unique selling point is it's a dog chew toy for 500 quid, basically, with a USB port. Anyway,
you don't have to have any musical ability.
Yeah, I'm not.
If you're a golden retriever, you'll do just fine.
Yeah, imagine what your golden retriever would do with it.
Yeah, he's getting very big as well.
Yeah.
Apart from
be down in one, wouldn't it? Pretty much. Anyway, I
keep finding things. He keeps eating stuff, and I like going, "Oh no, he's got that now."
Oh dear.
Yeah, he hasn't eaten any musical instruments yet, Bo, but we're getting there.
Well, for God's sake, don't get one of these. Right, video 4. This is a button I should press now. News item 1977, 9th of September. News at 1. Here we are, folks. I don't know what's going to happen next. Here we
It
go.
all began when two
Godley and
members
Creme
of the
there.
pop group 10cc, Lol Creme and Kevin Godley, had an idea for producing a whole new range of sounds from an electric guitar. Lacking the technical expertise to turn it into a full working
There we go.
model,
That's another-
they eventually took their invention to the physics department of Manchester University's Institute of Science and Technology.
It was a bit of a patch-up of glue, cardboard, bits of metal cut out with tin snips. But an excellent kind of work.
Let's fast forward it a bit. This is the Gizmotron, of course.
That would be done by a revolving wheel.
Oh, it's got batteries. I didn't realise that.
Each string. On each wheel, 48 tiny plectrons. By simply depressing a lever, the guitarist lowers the wheel to pluck the strings more than 100 times a second.
And there we have it. The Gizmotron, ladies and gentlemen. I think I might actually have an image of it somewhere, which I feel I should display, just so you can see it in all its glory. There it is. I tried to find some information about this, that because this was obviously quite a big deal. They got a primetime TV sort of thing made, and you know, I mean, at the time, 10cc were massive, weren't they? About 1977. I mean, just totally huge. So, but my rather sappy headline was, "Did it revolutionise music as they seem to think it would?" I don't think so, and I couldn't find anywhere, even on eBay now, how much it cost at the time or how much you would buy one now. Because I think the thing about it, because it had I'm not sure what the wheels made of, but they all fell off, so there's very few of them around. But there is a place called Gizmotron.org that restores them and are in fact working on one.
Didn't they say about 70 quid in the film?
Oh, really? Sorry, I missed that. I was obviously nodding
No,
off.
they said about £70.
About £70. But
About
that,
70
exactly.
English for your pounds.
that's a lot of money in 1977, isn't it? What's that going to work out? It's probably about 300, 400, 500 quid. It's almost the same price as a Skoog. But
No, that's what I prefer.
but yeah, obviously no USB. I'm just trying. This did actually fire off a thread of thought in my mind when I saw the topic that I have subsequently forgotten, which was something about. I think it had something to do with musicians creating instruments or technology and just kind of having them made. And Dave, you've done that because didn't you do the Fat Boy controller? You were the amongst the. Would you say that was perhaps this is a slightly quantum leap between these two topics, but. Have you ever seen a Gizmotron? All right, how about that? I'll start with that one. Start for 10.
No, but I want one. And if they're remaking them, I want one. There's something very Tron-like. First of all,
It's got Tron in it.
think of the name. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
got the word Gizmo and it's got the word Tron in it.
It's
So
just-
those two things just kind of fit hand in glove and make me salivate. So I'm thinking that, it would be a really cool thing to get. I know somebody who had one back in the day. And in fact, when I saw this topic, I was like, oh, yeah, I remember this because I've kind of secretly been looking randomly on eBay. I think what used to happen is the wheels used to wear out rather than kind
Right.
of drop off. But so, getting each of the wheels into contact with each of the strings reliably once it
I
had
think
been
it
used.
required quite a bit of setup, didn't it? By the looks of it.
Yeah, and that was problematical. But what I did do, I knew that this instrument was used on an album of theirs called Consequences, which was a triple album when I was at school, and I certainly couldn't afford it. But I love the Deceptive Benz album. I think there's loads of humour in what they do, which I really like. And I remember somebody coming to school after Christmas who'd got this Consequences triple album for Christmas, and I was the first thing I was, so what's it like? And they went, actually, it's not very good. Well, I listened to it this morning. That's as soon as I got this topic. So rather than working on patches, which is what I'm supposed to be doing now, I actually was kind of switching between that and looking at and listening to this Consequences album, and it's brilliant. It's on YouTube, actually. It's well worth checking out for anybody who's into kind of weird and wacky stuff. And you can see what they've done. And there's this absolutely fantastic, I really hope I've kept this up, So they're doing this album, and they said, they got to this point where they couldn't see the wood for the trees. It started out as a Gizmotron kind of demo album, and then it just elaborated from there and got completely out of control. And he said, regardless of the finished product, we just didn't want to stop. The result is a weird mix of sheer brilliance and utter shite. I could be wrong. It may be all brilliant, or it might be all shite, or even all brilliant shite. Either way, it completely fried our brains for a while, and it's impossible for me to be objective about it. Now, what's fascinating in listening to it is very Tron-like, and there's this amazing... I mean, we said, the days of doing this for musicians are kind of over. So 3 days were spent producing a saxophone sound from an electric guitar using the Gizmotron. Each note of a guitar solo was recorded separately and then faded in on the track, which was then sent through to a speaker and out of a rubber hose perforated with a cigarette paper at the end. So enough pressure was displaced by forcing the sound through the holes of the cigarette paper to give it the rasp of a saxophone. Genius.
That is
I want one just for that.
This is actually, I'm just fading a bit of Consequences up here. It's quite electronic, isn't it? I don't know if that's it. Interesting idea, though. And yes, they are in fact remaking them. If we go to, let me see, I've got gizmotron.org right here. 2014, they are, it says, yes, we are developing a new Gizmotron 2.0 for 2014, and it's going to be about $399 US. So if you want to get hold of one, I don't know what's going to do, or whether it's going to be as good, or whether they're going to feel they have to improve it. But I think probably the EBO, didn't the EBO kind of put the kibosh on it? Because EBO was about 100 quid. Lots of people use those. In fact, didn't Eno on Another Green World, who was the guitar? Was Eno guitarist on Another Green World? There's a lot of EBO on that, though, wasn't there?
EBOs are amazing. They're just brilliant.
Same really kind of idea, maybe.
Well, it's electromagnetic, isn't it? So it just vibrates.
Well, it's like, yes, I suppose so.
But wasn't there a guitar with infinite sustain as well, which had some kind of EBO thing built into it?
Moog guitar.
It and then... No, before that.
I don't know. It's entirely possible.
Oh God, what's it called? It was in the 1970s. I think it's a Gibson model with some kind of sustain circuit in it that just basically re-stimulates the string. But from the late 70s or early 80s, maybe.
God, can you imagine the amount of voltage that was going into that guitar to generate that?
Oh,
you weren't going to be anywhere near it. Sustainer. Les Paul developed lots, says Stu. Art in the chat room. So yes, chat room is helping. Fernandez Sustainer.
Fernandez Sustainer. Yeah, I think that's the one I was thinking of.
Excellent. Thank you, chat room.
That whole Gizmotron thing looks absolutely fascinating. Actually, I mean, I couldn't help looking at the guitar that he was using and thinking, I wonder if that guitar is worth less money if they've taken the thing off because it's now a Fender Strat full of holes, or if it will suddenly be worth more money to a collector somewhere, or if the thing's maybe still on there.
Well, that's the tricky part. I don't know whether or not how it got fitted, whether he had to put bolts in it or whether there was something else, because that would be a little bit of an issue, wouldn't it? Drilling, especially well, if you look at the holes where they are there. See if I can make that a bit bigger.
Oh, that's different, isn't it? But the one that
right there is kind of. Oh no, that's there. Well, you can't see. Oh, that's weird. It doesn't actually show up right. Right there is where the bolts. So right there is where your arm is going to go. So you're going to end up with sort of, stuff. Anyway, you know what I'm saying. Sonic 806 in the chat room says, "Think Steve Hackett has one built into his current Fernandez Les Paul copy." Nice idea, though, and it definitely had an interesting sound. There are. If you go on YouTube, there are a few demo records of it. They made a demo.
It does have an interesting sound. I mean, it sounds not dissimilar to a Mellotron in many senses, actually.
It sounds like
it's like a Byrotron. Actually, that's really what it reminded me of. Was the Byrotron was the kind of 8-track cassette cartridge version of it, but of course. There was no attack. I mean, it was just instant attack. You couldn't do anything to kind of change the attack because the motors were kind of whirring the whole time, and it was literally like, right, we're now making contact with the tape, or we're not. There was nothing nuanced, and as a consequence, pardon pardon the pun. It just made this god awful racket the whole time because these things just spinning and spinning.
Yeah. You don't
Even
really
when you
want
weren't playing anything, you're thinking, "What is that noise?"
Yeah, not what you want, really. Alternatively, you might want something along these lines, though. This is the Linnstrument, which we've covered before, but it's still under development. This looks like a different form factor again, once again. It's hard to see detail for this, because obviously this looks a little bit like one of those till keyboards you have at a shop that's covered in rubber, because you can't see the details. But actually what it does look like is, if I go here, well, you can see this is what the Linnstrument is supposed to look like. It's got overlays. In fact, you can change the overlays to note grid, guitar grid, piano grid overlay, drum pad overlay, hex flat. This is the isometric one, hex flat side overlay. I'm guessing we might be seeing some. It'd be good if we see some of these prototype things at NAMM. That'd be interesting. But it got me thinking a little bit again about, this endless search for new ways to input data. Effectively, is what we're looking at. I'm wondering, what is it about our lives that is not expressive enough? I guess it's the keyboard player's problem, really, more than anybody else, because guitars are more expressive than most things. Dave, have you got a desire? I did find a great search, which was just isomorphic keyboards, and then it just threw up all these interesting other keyboard layouts and various things that people seem to want to do as an alternative to just playing the keyboard. Obviously, the Keith McMillan thing looks kind of interesting, because that does give you X, Y, and pressure and all of those things. So that might be something that's worth having. But I mean, are you finding you're missing that stuff in your life, Dave? I mean, obviously you got Poly Aftertouch, but I guess the Keith McMillan thing would work because it's got CV out, so you could map it straight in, right?
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of that. No, I thought the overlay idea was really brilliant, actually, on this. But I don't know, I'd have to try one before saying whether it's for me or not. I do like this whole alternate MIDI controller thing. But I kind of reached this conclusion, well, what time is it now? About 3 minutes ago. No, a while ago, that actually what I really need to do is dedicate some time to getting my chops back together and becoming really proficient on something that's been around for several hundred years. I think that's kind of where my time would be.
Do you think there's an element? Do you think there's an element of that, Dave? So it's like, yeah, I can't play the keyboard. It just doesn't work for me. What I need is a Linnstrument or something else, or an isometric keyboard. Because when I start learning that, then that will unlock the key to my full creative power and fluidity.
I think that's the promise, that these things sometimes deliver randomly to one or two people. But I think that's kind of what the allure is. I could be the guy I could be the Chapman stick player equivalent of, I don't know. It's weird. There's sort of, there are times where I kind of think some of these things are a bit of a kind of super cul-de-sac. You can sort of disappear up them for ages and ages and kind of disappear up your arse, really. And then you go, actually, do you know what? My time might have been better served just practicing my scales and arpeggios.
That's an interesting. There is also.
But I'm old, so.
But there is also an element. If you've got something that looks completely unfathomable and only 5 people in the world can play it, and you're one of them, but you can't play it very well, then you can still play it better than most people. Do you see what I mean? So there's you can become proficient. In terms of, so you are in fact an expert in something that's just really obscure, and you might not actually be all that good. You're just good enough to kind of play Happy Birthday on it or whatever it may be. But that's sort of enough to make you seem like a wow.
I like that. That's very British and kind of very eccentric. I tell you, the only thing that really, and like I say, I'm not dissing this at all. I think, obviously they're two big heroes, and I was very intrigued with the Prophet 12
module. Yes, that's the
module, yes.
Yeah.
That's kind of what took my fancy. But I would like to try it. What did concern me is because he's saying that it's dynamic in the, obviously the harder you press the pad and whatnot. And I was thinking that I've had discussions with people on iPad saying that actually the way of getting some kind of dynamism in terms of pressure is to measure the amount of your finger that makes contact with the surface and then translate that somehow. And of course, we know, or I was seeing the other day that Apple have just bought some, motion control company, haven't they?
Oh, really? Not Leap?
I was kind of thinking, if you can't look, I think they're looking more towards the kind of Kinect and Leap Motion type vibe. But I was thinking, actually, they could effectively wreck anybody else's plans by going, we've taken that and we've put it in here, and now this iPad does this, and you kind of go, ooh.
They must have something up their sleeve, and the reason I know that is because I've got a piece of software called Orpheon, which measures something to do with your finger and how much size of pressure and pad goes on the screen. And after 5 different revisions or instances of that piece of software, Apple turned around and said, we won't approve that for the Apple Store because it does precisely that measuring thing. They said, we can't have any device doing that. So they must have something up their sleeve that they want to save that for their own thing, to herald their own thing. So the whole functionality of that very expressive instrument suddenly, I'm going to say it changed at the moment because I ought not to reveal certain things, but it's just, I don't know, it's just a really odd thing that they suddenly said that he was no longer allowed to use that functionality in any kind of iOS app.
Wow.
Although it exists.
I think people seem to be playing a drinking game in the chat room to do with the words with the mention of poly aftertouch. I think Echo Sonic has just won himself a drink because he says bingo. But anyway, I seem to have become labelled with someone who's just obsessed with aftertouch, which I assure you I'm not. I don't even, have a great fondness of it. It just seems to me that it should be on a keyboard that has expression, because we've only got up and down and on and off otherwise, and that's...
And it's been an absolute mystery.
Yeah, I think you're right.
When we implemented it in Posca 2, we were obviously being distributed by Avid and M Audio at the time, and that was one of the big things. We just went to them and went, there is no excuse now for people not to make a good poly aftertouch keyboard. In the old days it was due to... The claim was getting the data down the MIDI cable and all that kind of stuff, and
rubbish,
plugging stuff up, but USB, and we really, really laboured the point. And like I said, only up until I moved in here that I used that Kurzweil MIDI board, and being able to pick out a note or add expression, bit of vibrato, whatever you want, just even loudness dynamic is just a thing of joy. Again, another reason why I begged and pleaded that I can have a MIDI interface on the CS80.
Will it respond? I mean, will the CS80 allow you to have polyphonic aftertouch working that way, or is that extra? I'd imagine.
I really hope it does. To be honest, I didn't ask, but don't tell anyone.
Okay, all right. I won't. Your secret's safe with us, Dave, and the people listening.
To be honest, I was so excited, I forgot about that part. I was just like, can I have a MIDI interface? And Kent said, do you want Unison? I was like, yeah, please, can I have Unison? The whole thing was...
Excellent. Well, I think we're kind of... it feels like a good time to stop. My laptop technology has taken... seems to have held up, even though I've got this I don't know if that's right. If I show that? No, it won't show. Yeah, look, I've just got this thing has been kind of trying to connect to a remote desktop on one of my other machines the entire show, and I thought it might break everything, but it's been fine. So thank you very much, technology, and hopefully my newer laptop will be back for next week, and we shall see. But in the meantime, please do enjoy our reviews and stuff. We've got more things coming out. As I said, we've got the Gecko MIDI controller that works with Leap Motion. We've got Sonic Touch episode 27, where Gaz rocks out with Bios's amp simulator, which I have to say sounded bloody amazing. And I've also got the Pulse 2 ready to review. I'll probably get onto that next week. But I want to
Bios amp simulator, is that software?
Yeah, it's an iPad app. Yeah, get it, Mark. It sounds amazing.
Does it?
Really, really amazing. Black Friday deals. No, I'm trying to do that. Anyway, but thank you. Well, I may as well stay with you, Mark, so I can say thank you for joining us very much this week. And we should look forward to seeing you next time.
When is Black Friday?
I think it's
that after
this
Thanksgiving?
Friday, isn't it?
The day after Thanksgiving, is it?
Oh, I don't know. It's the
Wave usually throw up loads of ridiculous deals, don't they? Or give things away.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
Black Friday sale. Oh, must try and find one. I don't know of any. If anybody knows of any, please tell me. I always like bargains.
You like a bit of a bargain. Well, Mark,
Yep.
thank you very much for joining us anyway, Mark. It's been a pleasure to have you on board as ever, with you and your hat and your...
It was a cycle clip.
I know what that is. Oh, is that your dog?
Yeah. He found it. It's just
What happened to the rest of the bike?
He's eaten it, actually. he's also eaten this brush.
Oh, right. No, that's not too bad. That's just a sort of light
Doing
grazing.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, thank you, Mark.
Understand it.
Thank you very much
Yeah,
for
you're
joining
very
us.
welcome. Thank you very much.
And also Dave Spears over there in his U-boat filled with synthesizers.
Yeah, Achtung! It's a shame Hans isn't here. Could have wound him up, couldn't I?
Yeah, he's always a good sport with that. I've seen him in a polo neck. Anyway, thank you, Dave. GeForceSoftware.com will be no doubt enjoying the updates from his currently being fixed new synthesizer, or old synthesizer.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I had a phone call. I had a phone call last night, telling me that it hadn't been. It was relatively unmolested, let's say.
Ah, so it was better than you thought.
Which is always a relief, because God, scary.
Yeah,
cool.
I can imagine. Yeah, the single most complicated polyphonic synthesizer in the world ever, requiring a bit of servicing. And then, of course, by the time you get it from the place where it's being serviced back to your house, it will need more servicing.
Broken, yeah.
I'm sure that won't be the case.
God.
Anyway.
I've got to tell you a story. Can I tell you a quick story?
Yeah, go.
So I'm having a guitar made by a lovely man in... Oops, sorry about that. Having a guitar made by a lovely man in Wales called Jez, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, Woodruff. And he used to be the keyboard player in Black Sabbath, so he knows loads of people that we collectively know. But I got talking to him, and it seems that his family used to run this business in Birmingham called Woodruff Music, and he sold Nick his Jupiter 8, which is the same Jupiter 8 which I trudged round the world with for 15 years and soldered back together when it went horribly wrong. So that was like a kind of a little kind of completion of a circle of events, really.
Oh, nice.
He's a lovely man as well, and I am getting a lovely guitar as well.
Really nice. I very much hope you enjoy it immensely. Anyway, that's going to be Sonic Talk number 340. And I was going to say, I'm going to play out, because while I was doing this Godley and Creme research for the Gizmotron, I found a video of Cry, which I'd forgotten about, which was one of their Godley and Creme tracks. It was one of their biggest hits, and it was the video with them morphing faces. And at the end, there's Trevor Horn. So I'm guessing he must have produced that as well. God, there's nothing he didn't do. Anyway, I'll play that, and then we'll fade to black. Cheers. I won't play it all, obviously, because I'll get busted.